So, I'm following very interesting speakers today. And when I was asked to speak for CIFAR as an on-the-ground worker, I felt it was a very daunting task for me. I've taken much time and effort to write a very well-written and curated speech. And when I realized this morning that I couldn't remember a word of it, I made a very conscious choice, and this speech is getting put down because the most important thing about today is everybody in this room sharing their experiences. And what I'd like to do today is share my story and share my experience. I don't have data to back me up. I don't have years and years of wisdom and accumulated research that's going to prove what I do is right. But what I do is I get to experience every day the light in children's eyes as they give back to the world. So I'll start with my story. And it actually starts with me as a child. And when I was 7 years old, my father started instilling giving in me. And we've already heard questions to Laura today about, when can you start? Laura started at the age of 2 with children and trying to understand that giving. In my family, it was a tradition. My father was a doctor, my mother was a nurse. And so they instilled in us, and every Christmas is my first memory. And my father would pack us all up. We'd put on our nice little Christmas outfits. I think mine was a reindeer outfit. And he'd take us down to the hospital that he worked. My father's office never closed. He worked in a hospital. It was open 24/7, and he worked 24/7. But on Christmas Day, he didn't have to work. He went into the hospital because he chose to, because his patients were stuck in their rooms, those little rooms with dark settings. They didn't get to go home to the traditions of family Christmases. And so he brought us along to give them a little injection of Christmas into their rooms. And so we would stand around at the edge of their beds and we would start singing, "We wish you a Merry Christmas." And what I realized as I stood there is you could actually see the light in the patients' faces. You could almost see the light in their hearts as we sang away and we gave them this little injection, this little gift that made their day a little bit better. It was my first act of volunteerism. I had the opportunity to give of my time on Christmas Day with my family and give a gift to somebody in need. And I realized something about that, even at the age of 7. It made me happy. Giving actually made me happy, even then. So move forward in time. I get a little older. I continue doing my giving with my family throughout my childhood. And I come into my 20s and I say, okay, I've got the world at my feet. It's an open oyster. I can choose whatever I want to do with my world. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I could become a doctor like my father, a nurse like my mother. But the one message that had been driven back to me all of the time was, do something for a living that made you happy. Well, I kept going back to it. I realized the one thing that always made me happy throughout my childhood was giving. So off I went, and I started a career on giving. I became a special event fundraiser. And as you heard earlier, I had the opportunity to work with some amazing people just like you in this room. You're on-the-ground workers. You work in collaboration with other people to do some good in our world. And so that's what I did. And I worked away as a special event fundraiser for a number of decades. And I realized something in my journey, that every hour that I worked that I knew was benefiting somebody else or a different cause or a different organization, it continued to make me happy through the years. We've heard a lot about the research that has been going on with these two amazing people today. And the National Institute of Research talks about something called the helper's high. And I don't know if anybody has actually heard about it here, but we have this little part in our brain, our prefrontal cortex of our brain. And it's actually been proven via MRI studies as they watch the brain that even just by thinking about altruism, your brain is activated. It's activated in the same way that you do through sex, recreational drugs, large activity. Some of you may have heard of the runner's high. And in my case, a triple layered chocolate fudge cake, which, happens to be also food. But giving actually stimulates that same part of your brain that gives you what they refer to as the helper's high. So my life moves forward, and I'm given a remarkable gift. One day, I get a call, and I've become a mom. Pretty unusual, not the way most people, become a mother. But my husband and I had decided that we had wanted to adopt a child. And that call came one day, and very shortly afterwards, I had the opportunity for the very first time to hold this 11-week-old boy in my arms. And that's when my world truly changed forever. That little boy inspired me so much that I knew I had to make the world a better place. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I already kind of thought I had done a lot through my career, but I realized I needed to make the world a better place for him and the other children of the world. I also knew as a parent that I wanted to instill the same values in my child that my parents had instilled in me. I wanted him to be kind. I wanted him to be compassionate. I wanted him to experience what I had experienced, and that was I wanted him to be happy and learn it through acts of giving. So, at the ripe old age of 3, I thought my son was ready to learn to give. I gave him a gift on his 3rd birthday, and no, it was not a shiny new red bike. I decided to start a journey with him, a journey of giving. Every day for 365 days, we committed to doing one thing to give back to the world, AKA 365 Give. I decided that to record our journey, I was going to start a blog, because that's what everybody did at that time. Just so you're very clear, I'm not a writer. I'd never done social media. I wasn't on Facebook. I'd never done Twitter. But I decided that our journey was so important to me that I wanted to share it with as many people as I could. So every day I would give, every day I would blog, and for 365 days, that's what we did. We gave back. And an amazing thing happened. Surprisingly, people read the blog. People actually engaged with Twitter and Facebook. They emailed us from all over the world. One of my favorite stories and comments that I got back, or email that I got, was actually from a teacher in Australia. And she emailed me one day and she said, I've been following your blog, I've been following your journey. She said, and I've actually now taken 365 Give and I've put it into my classroom. This email literally put me to tears. I was amazed that what my son and I were doing together was actually inspiring a teacher on the other side of the world to teach her students to give. As our journey unfolded and actually came close to an end, I realized that our daily giving had almost become an addiction for me. Actually, my husband would for sure say it had become an addiction for me. But what I really realized as we completed our journey was that it gave my son and I a chance to connect to our community. It connected us to other places around the world. And most of all, our giving made us happy together. So an amazing thing happened on day 365. As you heard earlier, my husband and I had been in the process of adopting our 2nd child throughout this journey. And on day 365, my son's 4th birthday, my 2nd son came home. Amazing. Well, as we had said earlier, imagine what you give, because the gifts may keep coming back, and bang, 6 months later, my 3rd son came home. Well, for a short time after that, I was a little bit busy in my world. I was trying to just get through the personal torture of sleep deprivation, having 2 little boys under the age of 1 at the time and one still not quite of the age of 5. But I knew that I was still committed to 365 Give. I knew that one day I would find a way to take what we did and transition it to another part of the world. I knew I still wanted to give back to the world in some way. Well, a year and a half into my motherhood journey, I was given the opportunity to do just that. I got a call from a friend of mine. Her name's Sarah Donaher. And she too was a mom. And she was also a teacher at a local school in West Vancouver, Pauline Johnson, French immersion school. And Sarah said, you know, can we get together? I want to chat about something. And so we did what moms do. We had a play date. And we're down at a local beach in West Vancouver. Our kids are happily playing. And Sarah says to me, I want to teach my kids what you taught your son. She knew, and she had followed the blog, and she had followed our journey, and she had been an amazing supporter. And she felt that what my son and I had done together was so important, she wanted to instill it in her students. I was not only honored, but humbled, but I was excited. And I was enthusiastic to see where this might take us. Was it actually even possible to take what we did and put it into a classroom? Other than Sarah, would there be any other teachers that would even possibly consider this? So we sat down, we did our research. We looked at the science of giving. We looked at the psychology of giving. It's actually how Laura and I met a number of years ago. We studied how we might be able to take everyday giving and tie it into the prescribed outcomes that teachers have to attain in school with their students and curricular outcomes, so that we could tie daily giving directly into their curriculum. We took what we thought was a pretty good pilot project, and we took it to her principal. We sat down with her, a woman by the name of Chantal Trudeau, who happens to now be the chair of my board of directors for 365 Give. And we told her about our pilot program, which we were going to name the 365 Give Challenge. It happens to be a really interesting tie-in with our earlier talks on competition and challenging our students. We were actually doing something right, which I'm happy to hear. We called it the 365 Give Challenge, and in it went to our first schools. In our first 12-week pilot of the program, we had 300 students from the ages of 5, starting at kindergarten, up to grade 7. They did it. They went back, their teachers went back, and the kids started to give. And amazing things happened as we watched their journey. They got engaged with their learning. They were happy to come to school because it was their 365 Give week at school. Their teachers empowered them to choose what they were going to do to give back. They weren't told they had to donate to a charity. They weren't told they had to volunteer. The kids and the teachers sat together, and the kids got to choose exactly what they wanted to do. Every day for 5 days. So 1 week of school, 1 classroom together. To say the least, when the stories of the giving started coming out of the school, we were amazingly surprised. They helped support the SPCA. They volunteered their time at the local senior center. They picked up the garbage on the beach, and it continued. One of my favorite stories is for day one, the 100th day of school at the elementary level. They actually celebrate this day in school, especially at the elementary level, because it gives them an opportunity to work with math with the kids. And so a grade 2 class, who at that point in that stage in your educational career, you're just learning to count to 100. So they decided that they were going to tie in the 100th day of school to their daily give. They wanted to make 100 dog biscuits to donate to the local SPCA. Great idea. So as a parent, I look at it at both sides and I'm like, fantastic. You know, the kids are learning to give, but how is this possibly tying into their education? Aren't these kids supposed to be learning math and science and how to read and how to write? It's things we worried about all the time. So this is how it worked for the kids. They had to go and research and find a recipe, which they had to read, so they could learn how to make the dog biscuits in comes their reading and writing and research skills, even in grade 2. Then they had to mix. They did this right in school. They actually had to mix the batter to make the cookies. It tied right into their science. And they learned how baking and food and science all connect together. They baked their biscuits. Well, they had to find out how many biscuits they actually baked. Here's the neat thing. Their goal was 100 biscuits. Well, that day, that grade 2 class, they exceeded their own expectations. Not only did they bake 100 dog biscuits, they actually learned how to count to 212 that day, because that's how many dog biscuits they made, which they donated to the SPCA. The stories haven't stopped. They keep coming. Last year, we had 3,000 students participate in the 365 Give Challenge, 25 schools across the Vancouver area. It now ranges from the age of 5 up to the ages of 18. Student leadership programs are now embracing it, and they are teaching their younger kids how to give as well. One of my other favorite stories is actually about a kindergarten class. So these are 5-year-olds. Their teacher was teaching them about wildlife and the ocean. And she decided that she would be able to intertwine their daily giving. And the kids decided that they wanted to give back somehow to the wildlife that live in the ocean. So they did a little bit more research. And they discovered that the aquarium had recently taken in a sea otter by the name of Wally. Wally had been a very sick sea otter, and the aquarium took him in because he could no longer survive out in the wild, and they brought him back to health. Well, these little 5-year-olds decided they were going to put on a fundraiser for school. They made posters with pictures. They got on the school announcements and started announcing their fundraising initiative, and they were asked by their teacher to go home and not ask their parents for money. My kids ask me for money all the time to bring it to school. They were actually asked to go and do some work around the house to earn the money, so that the donation was actually coming directly from them with money that they had earned. Well, these little kindergarten kids ended up raising $300 for the aquarium. I was so impressed. I called the aquarium myself and said, I got to tell you about these kids. They're amazing. They've just raised $300 for you. And the aquarium was thrilled. They instantly sent buses down to the school the next week. They picked up the children and their teachers, and they took them down to the aquarium so that the kids themselves could present their donation right at the aquarium. Something for everybody in this room to think about, because I know there is a number of people here asking those questions for themselves. How do we engage new people? How do we get donations from different types of people across different borders? Well, the aquarium saw the opportunity. They saw the opportunity to engage a new generation of givers that had the potential of lasting an entire lifetime. So even though our children were participating in the 365 Give Challenge, and they did this particular donation because of the 365 Give Challenge, a really interesting thing happened that summer. And I actually got it via a blog from the aquarium. 5 of the kids from that kindergarten class had birthdays that summer. And in lieu of receiving birthday gifts when they had their birthday parties, they all asked for donations to give to the aquarium to support Wally even more. Between those birthday parties, those children, not asked by their teachers, not asked by me, those children raised another additional $400 for the aquarium. So almost $800 went to the aquarium by these 5-year-olds. It was an amazing story. And the benefit that I get is that I get to sit with these children. I get to hear their stories. I get to see the smiles on their face, and they tell me the same message over and over and over again. Giving makes them happy. I don't even have to ask them. They're not rewarded for what they do. They have found the reward in the impact they make with everybody that they touch. And they have now learned what I learned from my father, is that giving makes them happy. And I can only hope that they will carry this lesson through their lifetime. If you can take away anything today, I challenge you to find the helper's high. I challenge you today when you leave, find a way to give in your world. Make it simple. It can be simple. Pick up the garbage that you walk past on the street. Put it in the garbage. Help the planet. Today, the food bank was raising money via a market out front. Go and support before you go today. Find the ways in your life that you can give, because I guarantee you, you will get the happiness back tenfold. Thank you so much for having me today.